Yes, indeed. We're going to be talking about chain expansion and liquidity fragmentation. So what do you do when you have dust all over the place? We're going to try and clean it up in this panel.
Hi guys, this is Sarah from BME Chain. I'm the APAC leader for BME Chain. So BME Chain is a EVM compatible layer 1 infrastructures. We have BME Smart Chain, which is the layer 1, and we have OPPM, which is the layer 2. My role here is basically responsible for reaching partnerships with different projects and support developers, startups to building on top of BME Chain ecosystem. Thank you for having me today.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Annabelle Huang. I'm the managing partner for Ember Group. We're a crypto market maker and also digital asset management firm. So obviously happy to talk about market making both on centralized exchanges and also on chain, which is more relevant to the topic today, and how we feel about liquidity fragmentation. And hopefully my fellow panelists would have some solutions to help address that.
Hey everybody, my name is Nam. I'm one of the co-founders of Hyperlane. Hyperlane is an interoperability protocol, primarily a message bridge between all kinds of chains. I think our main focus is what we call kind of supporting this chain expansion. So like everybody is launching the L2 right now, and like the question is, how do you get connected both to other chains, but also to other applications building on top of Hyperlane, including Everclear itself. And so yeah, happy to talk about how the interoperability layer, the settlement layer basically helps with liquidity fragmentation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Peter. I represent a company called Raven. I'm one of the co-founders. We are a proprietary market making firm or trading firm. We market make on DeFi and CeFi as well. My personal experience goes way back to 2016, 2017, when I first entered crypto. And I've helped throughout my career, as a software engineer, I've helped fix a few issues or try to fix a few issues with the ecosystem. It started off with account abstraction. One of the issues that one of my former employers solved is called Argent. It's pretty much, this is a build on top of that. So we're going more into that abstraction layer, and I'll be happy to discuss more on the subject later on.
Joshua from Aori. What we're building is high-frequency DeFi execution infrastructure. So you're a trading firm, market maker, solver, even a chain itself looking for access to liquidity from other market makers and solvers. We're the infrastructure you use for that. So yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. So we're going to have a little bit of a kind of free-for-all style when it comes to answering questions. Please don't expect me to call out your name, but when you're vibing with an answer, then please feel free to jump in. So the fragmentation of liquidity is a significant and growing problem in the crypto space with the proliferation of chains and assets. So we got lots of L1s and L2s popping up. They all have their own tokens. And then there's tokens on those chains as well. What are the primary challenges market makers and centralized exchanges face in rebalancing liquidity and managing inventory across different chains and platforms? So we've got, like I was saying earlier, we've got dust all over the place. We've got, assets here, there, and gone. How do we get it all organized?
Yeah, I guess as a cross-chain solver, so we actually fill quite a few intent protocol orders on destination chains. So you have asset A and you want it to you want to bridge or do some kind of swap to asset B. As the liquidity provider for that, we have to be constantly thinking about, okay, once we take on this position, how can we possibly over a longer duration than the user actually offload that position? And that's just standard market making. This is exactly the same problems you see like on centralized exchanges when you pick up a position that you don't want to have, or even in traditional finance when you're trading some asset class and you have a position that you don't want. The job of a market maker is to price that risk and price the cost of exiting that position and offload that onto the user or the end user in the form of a spread. So yeah.
I guess I'll go next. So back in 2019, I would say 2020, you didn't have that much option, where to trade or where to buy tokens, where to deposit liquidity. That changed with the DeFi summer of 2020, which introduced multiple projects or protocols on the same chain. And then later on, it introduced more chains with even more protocols. This all created friction. And that friction leads to quite a lot of market inefficiencies, which makes the life of a liquidity provider a lot more interesting, but the life of the regular user a lot more painful. Now, not only you need to figure out a way to move your stuff around, but you also need to fight off all the risks that come involved with that. I think, and I might be wrong with the numbers, but in 2022, about 70% of all the hacks were pretty much breach related. And that was partially because we were trying to solve the same issue back then at the more straightforward way that we could, which was pretty much, bridge asset from A to B and sort of hope for the best. This opened up quite a lot of edge cases and quite a lot of loopholes, which was rather unfortunate. The other problem with that is, as a user nowadays, you have to figure out all the right and correct routing between all the different chains and different protocols, which makes your life a little bit more exciting than it should be. One good way that software engineering has been solving issues before is through abstraction, or in other ways, remove the complexity from the actual user's experience. When you do that, they would be able to enjoy whatever the protocol or chain is offering fundamentally in terms of either speed or amount of transactions that can go through or anything else that you may or may not want to play with. And it puts the complexity of that making that happen into the hands of people who are more experienced or at least more focused in doing exactly that, such as liquidity providers. We ourselves, we spend quite a lot of time trying to optimize all the routes, moving stuff around, and there is no reason for everybody else to rediscover the wheel when it's already been done. As such, our co-hosts, and I'm not paid to say that, but our co-hosts Everclear are actually, in my mind, on the right track where that pretty much, the settling goes over to the professionals and the fun and excitement stays with the user. That's pretty much my take on it.
Maybe you could come back to Alex's question, right? I think in a world where, like you said, everybody's launching their own L2s, like I'm assuming, I guess maybe this is proprietary information for you guys, but I'm assuming right now that for both of you, the number of chains or the number of assets you guys support is fairly limited because, right, the more assets and chains you support, the harder the rebalancing problem basically becomes. And so I'm kind of curious, in that world where, we see, I think the explosion of L2s that we see today, obviously Everclear helped a lot with that. But I'm kind of curious, will you guys go to Joshua L2 when it launches next year? How do you guys as market makers basically think about joining these kind of markets? Because otherwise, if I'm launching my own L2, to provide that user experience that you say, right, where liquidity providers basically take away the risk and all the kind of not nice things about bridging, but if no market maker is going to join us there, then what do I do as this L2?
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, actually, all really good points. I think back to the original question. So I think exchanges actually play a very important role in balancing or providing liquidity of tokens on different chains, and retail users almost use exchanges as a bridge, right, to cross. To swap, stables on different chains or to swap one asset to another. Market makers, or at least Ember, we primarily service institutions or high net worth individuals. So we're not really touching the retail side specifically. But again, a lot of what we do is similar, is abstracting away for our end clients the complexity of moving assets around. We've optimized the route, done our audits on the security side, and offer a service that way. But when we support new assets on new chains, it is actually manual, right? It's not, you have some sort of one click and you can support new chains because you have to manage your inventory, your internal risk management. So to your point, right, if there is a million L2s, it is very difficult, which is why I think there's still the solutions like AMMs where you're not so reliant on market makers to manage inventory, where you can have more sort of bootstrapped cold start. But ultimately, what we want to see in the end game is to have unified liquidity in some form. So yeah, I'll leave it like that.
I think it's like market making, solving kind of all these terms for effectively the same thing, which is just providing liquidity for a user who has an intent to say, I have a portfolio at time t and I want to have a different portfolio at time t plus one. Being a market maker is really, really simple conceptually. It just means like, yeah, I'll be the person who gets your trade executed. I'll be the other side of it. But it's all the hard part is effectively the inventory management, the risk management, the integrations. Like I make this joke all the time that the biggest limiter of market maker profit in crypto is not trading strategies, it's integrations. That's why like usually the highest paid engineer at a trading firm nowadays in crypto is the integrations engineer. So it's probably something to look into if you're an engineer. And yeah, like I think what's really, really cool about like kind of the area that Everclear across a lot of these cross-chain intent protocols are really looking into is being a solver is like has never actually been easier because it's so easy to just park USDC or ETH on some destination chain, whatever it is, and you have like a messaging protocol like Hyperlane that you're able to use to send messages between chains. And so your inventory time being a solver is generally same block. So you're never actually taking directional exposure in an asset. You can pre-compute what your input-output token amounts are going to be on any DEX. So you're actually like, you don't even have to hedge. You only have to do the hard parts of market making, like actually like holding perps and managing your deltas and things like that. It's just like, yeah, I found a route, did it, cool, done. My trade's unwound. So I think the cross-chain future is not going to be one where you find like these hyper complicated like shared sequencers or super block builders or anything like that. What it's going to be is like it's going to be boring. It's going to be like 30 market makers all integrating every DEX and every new chain and then competing to be the first people on it. So that's my 5-year thesis for cross-chain liquidity.
I want to add something as well. I think for BNB chain, we have a really big advantages here because major assets BNB chain it's also supported on Binance.com, which means we can really leverage Binance.com as the major bridge between different chains on BNB chain. So we have around like 60 key BTC assets wrapped through Binance.com as a centralized bridge to BNB chain. Then we have a lot of others like stablecoin assets, including USDT, USDC, etc. We're also exploring those kind of restore deposit functions with other centralized exchanges. I think that most of the liquidity right now in the crypto trading space is still the success, including Binance and etc. other ones. So that is one of the advantages that we leverage right now to really bring assets on BNB chain through whatever chain it is from, right? And also we are doing a new initiative which is calling the aggregation bridges. So we partner with like 3 important bridges in these places, and we offering liquidities to them, and we aggregate all those liquidity together from different chains and offer a more user-friendly experiences to our DeFi users directly to bridge the asset from other chains in a decentralized way to BNB chains. And besides that, we're also talking to different abstractions solutions, including some like AI related, like intent trading protocols or tools to offer users like they don't really need to care about what is the wallet they're using or if they have the tokens or the gas tokens on that chains. They can use it easily to send out a request through the platforms, and they can get the assets or get a transaction being done on a destination chains. Yeah.
Excellent. Wow. Everybody had like such amazing answers here. I feel like there's a rabbit hole topic of intents and off-chain solvers that is, I'm going to park it until like the end of the panel if time allows, but I feel it bubbling up. But tangentially related, did developing infrastructure to support new chains and assets require substantial resources? So how do you prioritize which chains or assets that you support? And what are some best practices for efficiently integrating new technologies into existing systems?
Yeah, maybe to I think add what Josh just said, like for us as Hyperlane, one of our like key stakeholders are basically what we call the long tail chains, the long tail L2s, right? Like if you're there's somebody here like maybe in Vietnam launching your own L2, right? I think what Josh just said is like 100% the reality, which is it's going to be an OP stack rollup, it's going to be an orbit rollup, it's going to be fairly straightforward what you have to do. But like even still, that very simple integration and just holding like what, like maybe 10K like USDC on that chain to basically fulfill user intents is really all you have to do. The margins are like insanely good, but still nobody's gonna do this, right? Like none of you guys are gonna support like again like random L2 from Vietnam. And so I think one thing that we've found, like what we've prioritized in this kind of like chain expansion basically model, right? Like where we believe that that's the future of our industry, is that we've like spent the last 2 years just like on like developer tooling, on like documentation, where like people don't ever have to talk to us to kind of like deploy Hyperlane to their chain and to get connectivity that way. And one thing we're finding now is that like we've done that, I think, rather well, but none of like nobody else is following us to that long tail of chains. And so one thing that again maybe I'll do that after the panel is to talk to all of you guys or anybody here in the room to basically ask like, hey, like like if you believe as well in this kind of like chain expansion narrative, like building tooling like that is super accessible to developers deploying these chains or like deploying these assets and making it so that like that kind of like low like again like low market making skill required solving can be made accessible, I think will be like huge in capturing the long tail.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like one thing that I think I'm super bullish on is like no matter how small the new chain is, there's so much open source infrastructure that's coming, like open source messaging protocols like Hyperlane, where you can instantly deploy, a bridging destination smart contract and be able to handle cross chain pool support, cross chain messaging support, integrations into like major L1s, L2s, and I think that's something that like we're really pushing on. But on the trading infrastructure side, so we're trying to open source as much of the Aori stack as we possibly can. So any new chain, any new destination can basically deploy a settlement contract and be able to handle any like cross-chain or same-chain settlement across any intent, infrastructure that we're integrated with. So, whatever bridge that is, whatever liquidity source that is, like we want to be there. And I think in the cross-chain future, you're going to have like the way we escape the bubble of TradFi, where like you have such a high centralization of exchanges, is by making it as unbelievably easy to become a market maker and a liquidity provider as possible. And I don't mean like in something stupid like an AMM, something like actually sophisticated. Yeah.
I was going to quickly touch on, again, to set a stage, I do believe in a multi-chain world, but I guess there's also questions to be asked. Do we need, all that many longer tail roll-ups, or is it going to be moving towards more of an app-specific roll-up world where you serve a more specific purpose than, more general purpose? But putting that aside, I think from a market maker's perspective, and probably from a user perspective, it is to there's a balance towards the integration work you need to do and what are the incentive structures, and ultimately, are there going to be enough usage, or is this the use case are relevant to me for me to actually deploy or use the roll-up, right? So I think on one end, there are a lot of the open source protocols that are building towards making new roll-up super easy, cross-chain super easy, initial liquidity provisioning super easy as well. But I think ultimately we still need to focus on the real use cases of this. And when you do, I think it's fairly easy to have market makers or any other participants to come on board.
I can share some experience about how we get those infras or developers or tools to support BME chain, right? Because we really have a comprehensive dev tools and infrastructure here in the BME chain ecosystem. That is because, firstly, we do have, as you mentioned, we do have some real use cases. The trading volume and the TVO on BME chain is really quite high. We are a top 3 TVO assets chains, and the trading volume is also like over 2 billion per week on BNB chains. So by doing it, for example, Oracle services offering the data feeding on BNB chain, which means they do have the demand from the top DeFi protocols and the trading users on BNB chains. And also there is 1 million DAU on BNB Smart Chain and another 4 million DAUs on BNB OPBM, which is layer 2, which also means that if you are developers, you have some tools you wanted to build, those are the user bases that you can sell your product to. So that is also how we sell ourselves to those big players or those key infrastructures. And also we are having a lot of like the layer 2, like dedicated app chains building on top of BME chain, which is built by the third party. For example, Xteros, they are building their own gaming specified layer 2 on top of BME smart chain. Then how they sell their service, their layer 2 solutions to other infra providers is they are also using the real use cases to show the developers or show the infras, like they do have these strengths in their specific areas, and they are really doing great on GameFi or game. They are bringing a lot of like really interesting game into the ecosystem, and we are also helping those layer 2 builders on BME chain to get more attractive to the infras or tool offers. So we have Kickstart programs that's covering all those related providers into that programs, and we are connecting them with those layer 2 developers and even asking them to offering a discount services to them. So that is how we build ourselves from scratch to have a really comprehensive infrastructure here, and also how we support other third parties that is building layer 2 on top of BNB chain.
I would pretty much take two positions at the same time. I absolutely fully support. That's what Nam and Josh said, is the less friction there is for something to be integrated, the higher chance it's going to be integrated. If you can simply sort of copy paste your integration, slightly adjust it and run it, then there is no issue with that. If you have to spend months upon months trying to figure out how something to get integrated, then in reality, it's not going to get integrated unless there is a really, really good reason to do that. Now, at the same time, I also like the diversity that DeFi offers. The whole ethos of DeFi is for people to experiment and try new things and to just generally try to rediscover already well-discovered concepts, because DeFi brings pretty much same thing in principle that the traditional finance do. Is just supposedly and going to be better in the long run. The idea here is to be able to go and experiment, do your own thing. I'm fine with chain expansion, and it's okay to have many and many upon many layers and chains and so on. Ultimately, some of them will die, some of them will succeed. Now, how do you choose the correct ones to integrate and to support and hope for the long-term survival? Then that's, I think, more of an art than anything else, to be quite honest.
One last thing. I think the concept of liquidity fragmentation just means arbs exist or arbitrages exist. And like my dream is for no market maker to make any money off of arbitrage trading, or very, very little. Like market making in crypto is like such a slanderous term for the most part, because like most of it is just arb trading, and that's not market making. Market making is like actually you're guaranteeing that you're going to provide liquidity at the bid-ask spread for any asset. And right now, like liquidity fragmentation fundamentally just means that like as an industry of market makers, we're not doing a good enough job.
Excellent. You kind of just dived right into the next question, which I had teed up, which is how does liquidity fragmentation affect retail and institutional differently? And what can be done to mitigate those effects to make the market a little bit more balanced? But I'm going to ask you all to like maybe keep it just a little bit tighter, because there's like one more follow-up question right after this.
Yeah, I'll answer mine, like just to end on mine. It affects retail because like the fact that we can't arb out markets, like a solved problem in traditional finance, means that like retail users get substantially worse pricing and more slippage, and that's like a huge problem.
I think that pretty much exhausted the question.
I think it's even worse than that. Like there's so many trades that like don't happen because there's just no market maker on the other side, right? Like it's not even like people like are willing to spend absurd amount of money, right? Like I'm a bridge, like I see how much people are willing to pay, like it's insane. And yeah, there's just like no market that exists that actually allows people to even arb. And so I think just the fact that it exists is like a tragedy, I guess.
Yeah, I'll maybe touch on a little bit on the institutional side. So actually, a lot of a part of the services that we offer is either working with the protocols to be the merchant. So for example, we can mint and redeem and do larger OTC type swaps for the institutional clients. But retail often don't get access to that, right? So they have to either swap via very complicated routes and pay much higher fees, or they have to wait till the integrations are live later. So yes, I think that does give the more institutional investors, early access or cheaper access. But to your point, right, that if we can actually have more decentralized and open source infrastructure to address that, again, how do you solve the market making piece on different towards fragmentation is something I guess will take much longer to discuss about, but we can find a way to do that and bring that gap between retail access and institutional access. We might see more activity on chain, right, in terms of just user numbers, whatnot.
I think your question just mentioned about the why BME chain or other layer 1, layer 2 is here, and why DeFi protocol is here. Yeah.
Thank you. And so this next one is a little bit near and dear to me because I do see a lot of chains out there that are, I would refer to them as almost ghost chains, where it's just very, very low actual transactions per block and whatnot. And the question specifically is like this: do you foresee a consolidation of chains in the future to mitigate liquidity issues? Or will the ecosystem continue to expand? Like, are we going to enter kind of an M&A season for blockchains? What do you all think?
I don't think so. People have been saying this for like 6 years now. I think in a perfect world, yes, but like in reality, no. What ends up happening? What's going to end up happening is like, and you're already seeing with like Optimism, Bedrock, Arbitrum, Orbit. Like, what's going to happen is it's going to be easier for new liquidity sources to get launched on new chains, and that'll mean each chain is therefore competing on state or on balances effectively or bridging, and so bridging will get easier and easier. Market making will get easier and easier between chains. So I actually expect to see like an explosion in the number of chains, frankly, over the next like few years, rather than a consolidation.
I would pretty much say that I don't think the number of chains or protocols, for that matter, is the actual problem. I would say that there is simply insufficient liquidity in the market, and that would only keep growing with time as the ecosystem grows and matures. And the easier it gets for more players to enter the space, the less of an issue it would be to some point. Now, if we stop the expansion and revert to less number of chains, I think that would actually stagnate progress than actually aid it.
Yeah. Okay. I would say like if we see like consolidation because it's aiding in liquidity fragmentation, then like we all have done like a terrible job, because it means that we've not made like building the best applications like more accessible, right? Like the reason why people launch rollups, the reason why people create new block space is because it opens up the space for like applications that you can build, right? Like add new precompiles, like make certain different trade-offs with respect to security or like decentralization. And it's kind of similar to, right? Like, oh, more programming languages make like, right, like building infrastructure harder. Or, like building like multi VM applications makes things harder than like single chain applications. And it's all true. But like in Web 2, we've learned how to overcome that. And that's just like building abstractions, building like better tooling to kind of like do that. Because ultimately, right, like you couldn't build Uber or Airbnb on a single machine, right? Even though building an application was easier back then. And so I think we are like, right, like part of being infra builders is making that way more accessible so that like application developers can focus on building the best applications. And if the implications of that cannot be solved by, again, building better tooling or like, right, like allowing market makers to like have an easier integration service area to kind of like serve those chains, then I think honestly burn it all down.
Yeah, can't agree more. But again, back to the original question, I don't think there's going to be sort of M&A happening in the existing space. It's probably like a winner take all or winner take most type situation. But I think what would happen is, I think, there's this already some explosion of the roll-up space. And then I do think we'll move more from general purpose to more app specific chains. And there's specific demand for the block space you're creating. I think that's more valuable. And when that happens, it should be, still an explosion, but maybe, different than what we've seen so far. And as we build more tooling, better infrastructure, more modular stacks to service them, then I think, we're probably moving from a fat protocol to sort of fat app future, and the application builders just need to focus on building the right applications towards the right use cases, and leave the infrastructure to, basically behind the scenes that's very easily composable and cater to them.
I agree. I think in general, there will be less of general purpose focused chain, but more depth focused chain, which means like this chain is dedicated for payment, that chain is dedicated for gaming, or another one is dedicated for privacy data, etc. things. But not for like, there's no need so many in general purpose chains. Yeah.
Everybody, you all had such robust answers to the questions. I actually didn't get through all of them that were prepped. Lightning round, and I know we're just like a hair over time. Lightning round. What is the question that you wished was asked on this panel as it regards chain expansion and liquidity fragmentation? And that way we can carry this conversation into the future online.
Why aren't there more market makers? Why aren't there more market makers? Where are they?
Well, you have 3 here.
No. His question was to ask.
Yes, exactly. We're opening up the question for the future online. If you have one question you wish we had asked on the panel and didn't, what is it?
I would pretty much focus on what is the single thing that you would like to build that currently doesn't exist or is vaguely touched on, but it would help solve the problem of fragmentation, pretty much.
It's a great question. I feel like whenever I ask a question, I've like spent like 5 minutes thinking about it. But the first thing that comes to mind, I guess, is with respect to market making or like liquidity fragmentation, is whether like the future, I guess, of market making will look like, more like passive, I guess, liquidity will be deposited on AMMs because that's just going to be easier and simpler because of the integration surface area, or whether we will see, these kind of like super like solvers, super market makers that just like have like basically built so much integration like power that they are able to basically serve the market well enough. So very curious on the answer to that question.
Yeah, the question I have in mind is actually as we talk about chain expansion, right? And I think everybody agrees, at least on this panel, that there will be new generations of chains popping up. I guess my question is, what is the more immediate demand for the block space? I think we talk about different use cases, but how many of them does need to live on chain? And I think that would also impact how we interact with these rollups or other new chains as well. So what exactly needs to happen on chain?
My question will be, what is the key barriers? One key barrier here to really impact that we in the future we really have a solutions to solve the liquidity fragmentation issues.
Well, thank you all very much. You all gave such baller answers. I'm blown away that you even let me on the panel here to moderate. Everybody, let's give it up for our panel.